biker bullies little girl's grandpa, then learns the hard way. In the sleepy town of Millfield, a reckless biker gang ruled the streets, striking fear into the hearts of the locals. Led by the arrogant Jackson "Steel" Carter, the gang reveled in their power, believing no one could stand up to them. They roared through the quiet neighborhoods, their engines shattering the peace and tranquility that once reigned supreme. As the sun cast its warm glow over Millfield Park, Tommy Grayson, a kind and elderly man, took his granddaughter, Emily, for a leisurely stroll. With a twinkle in his eye and a spring in his step, Tommy guided Emily to the bicycle path, eager to teach her how to ride her shiny new bike. Emily's face lit up with excitement as she gripped the handlebars, ready to embark on this new adventure with her beloved grandpa by her side. Tommy gently supported Emily as she wobbled on the bike, his steady hand providing reassurance and comfort. The pair laughed and cheered, lost in their own little world of joy and love. However, their blissful moment was about to be shattered by the roar of engines and the cruel laughter of Jackson's gang. The bikers sped through the park, their tires kicking up dirt and gravel as they narrowly missed Emily, causing her to lose balance and cry out in fear. Tommy, his heart pounding with a mix of concern and anger, calmly approached the gang, asking them to slow down and be mindful of others. But Jackson, his eyes gleaming with malice, merely laughed and shoved Tommy's walking cane aside, making a cruel joke at the elderly man's expense. As Emily watched in terror, Tommy remained composed, drawing upon the inner strength that had carried him through countless challenges in his life. Little did Jackson and his gang know that they had just picked on the wrong person, and their actions were about to set in motion a chain of events that would change their lives forever. Tommy Grayson stood tall, his weathered face etched with lines of wisdom and resilience. As Jackson's laughter echoed through the park, Tommy's mind drifted to a time long ago, when he was known by a different name, a name that struck fear into the hearts of his enemies and commanded respect from his allies. Unbeknownst to the biker gang, Tommy was no ordinary elderly man. He was a legendary retired Special Forces commander, once feared in elite circles for his unmatched combat skills and leadership. The name he had uttered, the one that instantly wiped the smirk off Jackson's face, was a reminder of his past, a past that he had left behind to embrace a life of peace and tranquility. As the bikers sped away, their engines roaring in the distance, Tommy turned to Emily, his eyes softening with love and concern. He knelt beside her, wiping away her tears and whispering words of comfort. "Don't worry, my dear," he said, his voice gentle and reassuring. "Those men won't bother us again. Now, let's get back to our lesson, shall we?" Emily nodded, her fear slowly ebbing away as she gazed into her grandpa's kind eyes. With renewed determination, she climbed back onto her bike, ready to face the challenge once more. Tommy, his heart swelling with pride, guided her along the path, his steady hand a symbol of the unwavering support he would always provide. Meanwhile, word of the incident began to spread like wildfire through the town. Whispers of Tommy's true identity floated on the breeze, reaching the ears of those who had once served under him, respected veterans, law enforcement officers, and even ex-bikers who had ridden by his side. As the news traveled, a sense of anticipation grew, a feeling that change was coming to Millfield, and that Jackson and his gang were about to face a reckoning they never saw coming. In the heart of the town, a small seed of hope had been planted, a seed that would soon blossom into a force for transformation and unity. And at the center of it all stood Tommy Grayson, a man whose strength and courage would inspire a community to stand together against the darkness. As the sun began to set over Millfield, casting a warm glow across the quaint streets, Tommy and Emily made their way home, their hearts full of the day's events. Emily, her eyes sparkling with excitement, chattered endlessly about her newfound love for cycling, while Tommy listened intently, his face etched with a gentle smile. Unbeknownst to them, the wheels of change had already been set in motion. Across town, in dimly lit bars and quiet living rooms, Tommy's old comrades gathered, their faces lined with determination and purpose. They had heard the call, the whisper of their former commander's name, and they knew that the time had come to stand by his side once more. In a small, unassuming house on the outskirts of town, Frank "Bulldog" Johnson, a grizzled ex-biker who had once ridden under Tommy's command, sat at his kitchen table, his fingers tracing the faded tattoos that adorned his arms. As he sipped his coffee, his mind wandered back to the days when he had been a part of something greater, a brotherhood forged in the heat of battle and tempered by the bonds of loyalty. Across the street, in a tidy bungalow with a well-manicured lawn, Sarah Maverick Thompson, a respected veteran and former Special Forces operative, pored over old photographs, her eyes misting with memories of the past. She had served alongside Tommy, had witnessed firsthand the strength and compassion that made him a true leader, and she knew that she would answer his call without hesitation. As the night wore on, more of Tommy's old comrades arrived in Millfield, drawn by the unspoken promise of a shared purpose. They gathered in secret, their voices low and their eyes alight with determination, as they planned their next move. They knew that Jackson and his gang were about to face a force unlike any they had ever encountered, a force that would teach them the true meaning of respect and humility. And as Tommy tucked Emily into bed, his mind weighing the events of the day, he knew that the time had come to embrace his past once more, to stand tall and fight for what was right. For in the face of injustice and cruelty, silence was not an option, and Tommy Grayson was never one to back down from a challenge. The morning sun rose over Millfield, casting its golden rays across the sleepy town. As the residents began to stir, a palpable sense of anticipation hung in the air, as if the very fabric of the community was holding its breath, waiting for the moment when everything would change. Tommy Grayson stepped out onto his front porch, his eyes squinting against the bright sunlight. As he surveyed the quiet street, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and purpose swelling in his chest. He knew that the time had come to take a stand, to show Jackson and his gang that their reign of terror would no longer be tolerated. As he made his way down the street, Tommy's mind drifted to the past, to the countless battles he had fought and the lives he had touched. He had always been a man of principle, a leader who inspired others to be their best selves, and he knew that this moment was no different. He was ready to lead once more, to guide his community towards a brighter future. Across town, Jackson Steele Carter lounged in his makeshift throne, a battered armchair in the center of his gang's dilapidated hideout. He smirked as he surveyed his loyal followers, their faces etched with a mix of fear and admiration. He reveled in the power he held over them, the way they hung on his every word and obeyed his every command. But even as he basked in his own arrogance, Jackson couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was amiss. The mention of Tommy's name had unsettled him, though he would never admit it out loud. He had heard whispers of the legendary commander's past, of the respect and fear he commanded, and a small part of him wondered if he had finally picked on the wrong person. As Tommy rounded the corner, his eyes fell upon a small group of his old comrades, their faces etched with determination and loyalty. They nodded in silent acknowledgement, a gesture that spoke volumes about the bond they shared. Together, they set off towards the heart of Millfield, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their quest for justice and redemption. The sun climbed higher in the sky as Tommy and his comrades made their way through the streets of Millfield, their footsteps echoing on the pavement like a heartbeat of the town. They moved with purpose, their eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of trouble, their minds focused on the task at hand. As they approached the center of town, a small crowd began to gather, drawn by the unusual sight of the group of veterans and ex-bikers. Whispers rippled through the crowd, speculation about who these strangers were and what their presence might mean. Among the onlookers was Maria Sanchez, the owner of a small bakery that had been a fixture in Millfield for generations. As she watched Tommy and his companions, her heart swelled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. She had seen the way Jackson and his gang had terrorized the town, had felt the fear and helplessness that gripped the community, and she longed for someone to stand up and make a difference. As if sensing her thoughts, Tommy turned and caught Maria's eye, offering her a small, reassuring smile. In that moment, a flicker of understanding passed between them, a recognition of the shared desire for change and the willingness to fight for it. Encouraged by Tommy's presence, Maria stepped forward, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "Thank you," she said, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you for being here, for showing us that we don't have to live in fear." Her words seemed to break the spell of silence that had fallen over the crowd, and soon others began to voice their support, their voices rising in a chorus of hope and unity. Tommy and his comrades stood tall, their hearts swelling with pride and purpose, as they realized that they were not alone in their fight. From the shadows, Jackson and his gang watched the scene unfold, their faces twisting with a mixture of anger and unease. They knew that the balance of power was shifting, that the once fearful town was beginning to find its courage, and they couldn't help but wonder what the future might hold. As the crowd around Tommy and his comrades grew, so too did the sense of unity and purpose that had begun to take root in Millfield. People from all walks of life, young and old, began to emerge from their homes and shops, drawn by the magnetic pull of the group's presence and the promise of change that hung in the air. Among them was David Thompson, a young man who had grown up in the shadow of Jackson's gang, his dreams of a better life slowly eaten away by the fear and hopelessness that had pervaded the town. As he watched Tommy and the others, a spark of inspiration ignited in his heart, a flicker of possibility that he had thought long extinguished. With a newfound sense of courage, David stepped forward, his voice trembling slightly as he addressed the group. "I want to help," he said, his eyes shining with determination. "I want to be a part of something bigger, something that can make a real difference in this town." Tommy smiled, his eyes crinkling with warmth and understanding. He placed a hand on David's shoulder, his touch a reassuring weight that seemed to anchor the young man's resolve. "We all have a part to play," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Every act of kindness, every choice we make, no matter how small, has the power to change lives." As the sun began to dip towards the horizon, casting a golden glow over the town, the group began to disperse, each member returning to their own lives and responsibilities. But the seeds of change had been planted, and the once divided community had begun to come together, united in their desire for a better tomorrow. In the days that followed, small acts of kindness and courage began to ripple through Millfield, like pebbles dropped into a still pond. A neighbor helping an elderly woman with her groceries, a child standing up to a bully, a local business owner refusing to pay Jackson's protection fees, each action a tiny spark of hope that, when added together, had the power to ignite a wildfire of transformation. As the days turned into weeks, the changes in Millfield became more and more apparent. The once deserted streets began to fill with life and laughter, as people emerged from their self-imposed isolation to rediscover the joys of community and connection. At the heart of this transformation was the Millfield Community Garden, a once neglected plot of land that had been reclaimed by Tommy and his comrades. Together with a group of enthusiastic volunteers, they had cleared away the weeds and debris, turning the barren soil into a lush oasis of green. As the garden flourished, so too did the spirit of the town. Children played among the rows of vegetables, their laughter mingling with the buzzing of bees and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Adults gathered to share stories and recipes, their hands stained with the rich earth as they tended to the growing plants. For Tommy, the garden was more than just a project, it was a symbol of the power of unity and the resilience of the human spirit. He watched with pride as his granddaughter Emily and her new friends played among the sunflowers, their faces aglow with the simple joys of childhood. But even as Millfield blossomed, the specter of Jackson and his gang loomed on the horizon. Though their hold on the town had weakened, they refused to relinquish their grip entirely, lashing out with increasing desperation and cruelty. One evening, as Tommy walked home from the garden, he found himself face to face with Jackson, the biker's eyes glinting with malice in the fading light. "You think you can change things, old man?" Jackson sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "You think you can take what's mine?" Tommy stood tall, his face a mask of calm determination. "This town doesn't belong to you, Jackson," he said, his voice steady and clear. "It belongs to the people who live here, the people who have chosen to stand together and fight for something better." As the two men stared each other down, the air crackling with tension, Tommy knew that the final showdown was fast approaching. But he also knew that he was not alone, that the strength of the community he had helped to build would be the key to their ultimate victory. In the heart of Millfield, the newly renovated community center stood as a beacon of hope and resilience. Once a rundown, abandoned building, it had been transformed by the tireless efforts of Tommy and his comrades, along with a dedicated group of volunteers from the town. As the sun set on a warm summer evening, the community center buzzed with activity. Inside, a diverse group of Millfield residents gathered for a town hall meeting, their faces etched with a mix of determination and hope. At the front of the room, Tommy stood at a podium, his presence commanding the attention of all those present. Beside him, his old comrades and new allies stood in solidarity, the united front against the darkness that had once threatened to engulf their town. "My friends," Tommy began, his voice resonating through the room, "we have come a long way together. We have faced challenges and overcome obstacles, and we have shown the world that the spirit of Millfield cannot be broken." As he spoke, heads nodded in agreement, and a sense of pride swelled in the hearts of those gathered. They had each played a part in the transformation of their town, from the smallest acts of kindness to the grandest gestures of support. "But our work is not yet done," Tommy continued, his eyes scanning the room. "We must remain vigilant, and we must continue to stand together in the face of those who would seek to divide us. For it is only through unity that we can truly build a better future for ourselves and for generations to come." As the meeting drew to a close, the residents of Millfield filed out into the night, their hearts filled with a renewed sense of purpose. They knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be challenges and setbacks along the way. But they also knew that they had the strength and the courage to face whatever lay ahead, as long as they stood together. From the shadows, Jackson and his gang watched the proceedings with growing unease. They could feel the tide turning against them, the once unshakable foundation of their power beginning to crumble beneath their feet. And as they slunk away into the darkness, they couldn't help but wonder if their days of dominance were finally coming to an end. As the weeks passed, the residents of Millfield continued to come together, their collective strength growing with each passing day. Small acts of kindness and compassion became the norm, as neighbors looked out for one another and strangers became friends. In the midst of this newfound unity, Tommy and his comrades began to plan their final confrontation with Jackson and his gang. They knew that the bikers would not go down without a fight, but they also knew that the power of the community was on their side. Late one night, as the town slept, Tommy and his team gathered in the community center, poring over maps and strategies. They were determined to put an end to Jackson's reign of terror once and for all, to send a message that Millfield would no longer tolerate those who sought to sow fear and division. As the first light of dawn began to peek over the horizon, Tommy and his comrades set out, their hearts filled with a mix of determination and apprehension. They knew that the confrontation ahead would be the ultimate test of their resolve, but they also knew that they were fighting for something greater than themselves. Meanwhile, across town, Emily sat at her bedroom window, watching the sun rise over the rooftops. She thought of her grandpa and the countless others who had stepped up to defend their town, and a sense of pride swelled in her heart. She knew that, no matter what happened in the days to come, Millfield would never be the same, that the seeds of hope and unity that had been planted would continue to grow and flourish. As Tommy and his team approached the bikers' hideout, they could hear the roar of engines and the shouts of the gang members. They exchanged a final look of solidarity, their eyes speaking volumes about the bond they shared, before squaring their shoulders and stepping forward to face their destiny. The final battle for the soul of Millfield was about to begin. The sun climbed higher in the sky as Tommy and his comrades stood face to face with Jackson and his gang, the tension between the two groups palpable in the air. For a long moment, neither side spoke, each sizing up the other, looking for any sign of weakness or hesitation. Finally, Tommy stepped forward, his voice calm and steady. "Jackson," he said, "it's time for this to end. Your days of terrorizing this town are over." Jackson sneered, his eyes glinting with malice. "You think you can stop us, old man? You and your little band of do-gooders?" But even as he spoke, there was a flicker of uncertainty in Jackson's eyes, a recognition of the strength and determination that radiated from Tommy and his companions. Suddenly, the roar of engines filled the air, and the residents of Millfield began to emerge from their homes and shops, their faces set with grim determination. They stood behind Tommy and his comrades, a united front against the darkness that had once held their town in its grip. Jackson's gaze darted from face to face, his bravado beginning to falter in the face of such overwhelming opposition. He looked to his gang members for support, but even they seemed to waver, their loyalty tested by the sight of the entire town standing against them. In that moment, Tommy knew that victory was within reach. He took another step forward, his voice ringing out clear and strong. "Leave now," he said, "and never come back. This is our town, and we will defend it with everything we have." For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath, the fate of Millfield hanging in the balance. Then, with a final snarl of defiance, Jackson gunned his engine and sped away, his gang following close behind. As the dust settled, the residents of Millfield let out a collective cheer, their voices rising in a chorus of triumph and relief. They had faced their darkest hour and emerged victorious, their town forever changed by the power of unity and hope. In the days that followed the confrontation with Jackson and his gang, a sense of peace settled over Millfield like a warm blanket. The streets once again echoed with the laughter of children and the chatter of neighbors, the fear that had once gripped the town now nothing more than a distant memory. Tommy and his comrades had become heroes in the eyes of the community, their bravery and leadership an inspiration to all who had witnessed it. But for Tommy, the true heroes were the people of Millfield themselves, the ordinary men and women who had found the courage to stand up and fight for what was right. As he sat in the community garden, surrounded by the lush greenery and vibrant blooms, Tommy couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them to this moment. He thought of the challenges they had faced, the obstacles they had overcome, and the bonds they had forged in the heat of battle. Beside him, Emily played happily, her laughter mingling with the chirping of birds and the gentle rustling of leaves. She had grown so much in the past few months, her once timid demeanor replaced by a newfound confidence and strength. Tommy smiled, his heart swelling with pride and love. He knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be new challenges and struggles to face. But he also knew that Millfield was stronger than ever, that the seeds of hope and resilience that had been planted in the hearts of its people would continue to grow and flourish. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the garden, Tommy rose to his feet, his hand outstretched to his granddaughter. "Come on, Emily," he said, his voice warm and gentle. "Let's go home." Together, they walked hand in hand through the streets of their beloved town, the once broken community now a shining example of what could be achieved when people came together in the name of hope and love. Months had passed since the showdown with Jackson and his gang, and Millfield had undergone a remarkable transformation. The once divided town now stood united, its residents working together to build a brighter future for themselves and their children. At the heart of this transformation was the Millfield Community Center, which had become a hub of activity and a symbol of the town's newfound spirit. Every day, people of all ages and backgrounds gathered there to learn, to create, and to celebrate the bonds of community. Tommy and his comrades had become the unofficial leaders of the center, their wisdom and experience guiding the town through the challenges of growth and change. They taught classes on everything from gardening to self-defense, sharing the skills and knowledge they had acquired over a lifetime of service. One warm summer evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the residents of Millfield gathered in the center's main hall for a special celebration. The room was filled with the sounds of laughter and music, the air thick with the aroma of freshly baked bread and simmering stews. As Tommy took the stage, the crowd fell silent, their eyes fixed on the man who had become a symbol of hope and resilience for their town. "My friends," he began, his voice strong and clear, "I stand before you tonight not as a hero, but as a member of this community, a community that has shown the world what can be achieved when we come together in the spirit of love and unity." He paused, his eyes scanning the sea of faces before him. "Each and every one of you has played a part in the transformation of Millfield, from the smallest acts of kindness to the greatest sacrifices. And it is because of you that we stand here today, stronger and more united than ever before." As the crowd erupted in cheers and applause, Tommy felt a sense of profound gratitude wash over him. He knew that the journey was far from over, but he also knew that Millfield had the strength and the courage to face whatever lay ahead, as long as they stood together. As the years passed, Millfield continued to thrive, its once shattered community now a shining example of what could be achieved through unity and perseverance. The town had become a beacon of hope for others, a testament to the power of the human spirit in the face of adversity. Tommy and Emily remained at the heart of the community, their bond stronger than ever. Emily had grown into a confident young woman, her dreams of a better world fueled by the example set by her grandfather and the countless others who had fought alongside him. One crisp autumn morning, as the leaves turned golden and the air grew cool, Tommy and Emily sat together in the community garden, their hands stained with the rich soil they had worked for so many years. "Grandpa," Emily said, her voice soft and thoughtful, "do you ever think about how far we've come? How much has changed since those dark days?" Tommy smiled, his eyes crinkling with warmth and wisdom. "Every day," he said. "And I am so proud of you, Emily, and of everyone in this town. You have shown the world that there is no challenge too great, no obstacle too daunting, when we face it together." Emily leaned her head on her grandfather's shoulder, her heart filled with love and gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you," she whispered. "You showed me what it means to be brave, to stand up for what's right." Tommy shook his head, his voice gentle but firm. "No, Emily," he said. "You showed me. You and everyone in this town. You showed me that true strength comes from within, from the courage to face our fears and the compassion to lift each other up." As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting its golden light over the garden, Tommy and Emily sat in contented silence, their hearts filled with the knowledge that they had been part of something greater than themselves, something that would endure long after they were gone. Years turned into decades, and the story of Millfield's transformation became the stuff of legend. The once small town had grown and prospered, its streets lined with thriving businesses and its parks filled with the laughter of children. But even as the world around them changed, the spirit of unity and resilience that had been forged in the crucible of adversity remained a constant, passed down from generation to generation like a precious heirloom. And at the center of it all, the memory of Tommy Grayson and his band of unlikely heroes lived on, a testament to the power of courage and compassion in the face of darkness. For Emily, now a grandmother herself, the lessons of those long-ago days had become a guiding light, a reminder of the strength that lay within each and every one of them. She had passed those lessons on to her own children and grandchildren, nurturing in them the same love and respect for community that had been instilled in her so many years before. As she sat in the community garden, surrounded by the descendants of those who had fought alongside her grandfather, Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and wonder at the legacy they had created. "This is what it means to be part of something greater than ourselves," she said, her voice soft but filled with conviction. "To know that our actions, no matter how small, have the power to change the world." And as the sun began to set on another day in Millfield, the town that had been reborn from the ashes of fear and division, Emily knew that the spirit of her grandfather and all those who had stood with him would live on, a beacon of hope and inspiration for generations to come. For in the end, the true power of Millfield lay not in its buildings or its streets, but in the hearts of its people, in the unbreakable bonds of love and compassion that had been forged in the face of adversity, and in the knowledge that, together, there was nothing they could not overcome.